Hello, everyone. So happy to see all of you here today. This is the 5th installment of a series of tutorials focusing on Harmony Core. If this is your first time joining us, don't worry. You can catch up by reviewing the previous webinars in the series on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and copy a link to our channel here. So that's available in the chat box. And I would encourage you to take a look at the Harmony Core wiki on GitHub, where the same information being covered today is explained in a good amount of detail. And you can also find some very useful supplementary information as well. So you can see Steve has that up very helpfully. Thank you, Steve. So I'm Liz Wilson, digital producer at Synergex, and our on-screen presenter is, of course, Steve Ives. He moved to a product manager role early this year, and he and Jeff Green, the Harmony Core technical lead, who is also here as a panelist, have been doing some really great work in terms of enhancements to the Harmony Core product and just getting the word out. So both Steve and Jeff will be available to answer your questions at the end of this webinar. And in the meantime, feel free to post whatever questions you may have in the chat or question panel. So without further ado, take it away, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so this is where are we? This is tutorial 6 in the series. I think we did a sort of intro and then following the 5 tutorials that we've got so far. So just to review very briefly, this will be a quick session. By the way, the subject matter is fairly concise today. We started off several weeks ago now with tutorial 1, where we created a demo service. And then we also I think this may be 5 in the series, because I think the 2 were combined. And then we created a service from scratch. And since then, we've been building up that same service. And we're going to be working in that very same service. So these videos do flow from one to the other. And we are going to be working with the exact same service that we worked with last time. The only thing I've done with it in the meantime is there have been a couple of Harmony Core releases. And therefore, I have used the Harmony Core upgrade tool to upgrade the version of Harmony Core that's used in the environment to ensure it continues to be the latest version. So we went through that building up of the service and adding all of the CRUD, create, read, update, delete endpoints. And we demonstrated using the OData query syntax to perform advanced queries and then creating, updating and deleting things and so on. We then went on to do authentication. So if you remember, our service is protected. In fact, let's while we're talking, let's just run the thing up. So it'll be there ready for us when we want it. So we then added authentication. So we do need to obtain provide our credentials and obtain our security token in order to interact with the service, as we did in the past. And then in the last session, we added traditional bridge. So traditional bridge is a way of incorporating existing, perhaps or new, traditional synergy logic that could be potentially on a different system, on a Windows or a Unix or a VMS remote system or a local system into the scenario. So that's where we left off. What we're going to be doing today is walking through a new tutorial which has just gone live. It is tutorial number 5. Let me just point out a couple of things. I believe the tutorials page was there previously. So this page just has a summary of all of the tutorials and what you'll learn in each. And there's also a coming soon section which shows you about what we have planned for future tutorials and or webinars. I've added fairly recently the webinars page to the documentation. Obviously, you can go directly to the YouTube channel where Liz posted the link. But here, specifically on this page, you've got both this series of webinars and you've got the XFBBQ series of webinars that Johnson just completed. And you can access those all from this one page as well if you want to just work through them. So that's just an alternative to going directly to YouTube. All of these just launch off straight to the YouTube page for each of those videos. So that's fairly new. Tutorial 5 has just gone live, and the subject is adding unit testing capabilities to a Harmony Core existing solution. So that's the tutorial we'll be following through today. It's basically a code generation task, so this will be a fairly brief webinar. We enable an option, we generate a bunch of code, we add a new project into the solution, and we run our unit tests. The idea behind this is that what we're doing is code generating a starting point for you, so that you can then go and add your own unit tests that make more sense and are more customized to your data and your environment. So we don't intend the unit test that we code generate for you to be all singing, all dancing, the end of the story. It really is intended to be a starting point for you to then build your own set of tests. And you'll see how that happens. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's just run up. We've run up the service. It's running. I just want to go and obtain a token so that we'll be able to access the service. So here's our get token request. And again, if we send the request, we get our JSON web token. And as we know, we need to specify that. So I'm going to edit the Postman collection that's got all of my tests in. I'm going to update the token to one that's valid for today. As if you remember, the tokens are valid by default for 24 hours. I'm also going to edit the traditional bridge test project and put the current token in there. And then let's just verify that the service is working. So let's just do a simple request. We'll read a customer. We'll do a send. This is the first request to the service, so it always takes a little while there. Let's just rerun that to prove it came back 52 milliseconds. There's our get customer. And let's make sure that traditional bridge environment's working as well. So let's just do that. And there's our result from our get environment call. So everything's up and running as it was in the past. What we're going to do is I'm going to shut the service down again, and we're going to go about seeing how we add unit testing to this environment. So I've got our existing solution open. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a command prompt from this solution. Oops, it opened on the wrong window, of course, as it always does. And then what I'm going to do is go up to the solution directory. It's always going to drop you in whichever project happens to be active. Usually your services host projects, because that's where you run things from. So to get up into the solution directory, you just go up one level. We're going to be using a tool that does require the solution dir environment variable to be set. So I'm going to say set solution dir equals, and I'm going to use the Windows command prompt shortcut %cd% and make sure I've got a backslash on. %cd just translates to the current directory, and add a backslash. So that should have set the solution dir environment variable correctly for us. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure I've got the latest version of the Harmony Core project templates, because we've added a new project template recently to support this tutorial and to support you in adding unit tests into your solutions. The difference is that as well as the Harmony demo fully configured environment and the Harmony Core basic environment, there's a new project template called Harmony Test. And this doesn't generate a solution, it generates an additional project into the solution. So it's a project for unit testing. So I'm going to go ahead and execute the command, if it will let me. I guess I copied the wrong thing, bear with me. Copy, paste, there we go. So .NET new -i, we've seen this command a few times. This is the one that goes out to NuGet and downloads the latest version of our project templates. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm not sure why it's giving me that text. Normally you only see that the very first time. Maybe something got updated. But there we go. It's installed our project templates. And as you've seen before, you get a list of the installed templates now. And we should see now, we've now got 4 Synergy templates, including the new Harmony test that is documented as a test/MS test. So it's going to produce an MS test environment. It's just a console application that runs unit tests. So now we've got that project template. What we're going to do now is use that template to create a new template in or a new project in our environment. So again, remember, we're in the solution directory. So I'm going to use a command which is .NET new to create a new project or solution, Harmony test. And I'm going to specify the name that I want the project to be. In this case, and it is important that you use this name if you want everything to flow and work automatically, The reason is that the code generation environment is always and always has been pre-configured to know about this project name should you enable unit test generation. So the name of the project needs to be services.test. Now, if you really want to call it something else, you can, but you'll have to customize something at the top of regen.bat, and I'll show you where that is in a moment. So let's add our new project into the solution. There we go. And what that will have done is created a new services.test folder. And if we look in there, you'll see that we've got some folders, we've got a source file, a program, and we've got a new project file. What the .NET new command does not do is it does not add that project into the solution for you. So that's the next step. And what we're going to do is go back to Visual Studio, right-click on our solution, and I don't know why I guess I can look over there. We'll say Add Existing Project, and we'll browse into our directory, which is this one, and there's our new service. Oh, I called it the wrong name. Why didn't somebody shout out and tell me? Okay, let's delete it again. Having said it's important to get the name right, I then go and get it wrong. Okay, let's do this again. Services.test, so it's in line with all the others. There we go. There's our services test project. Let's add existing project, and we'll add our, where are we? I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. There's our solution directory. There's our new project. We'll add that project into the solution. It will just take a couple of seconds and it will refresh like that. And once it does, you'll see that the advantage of using the project template is that rather than, because you could just create a new console application project, but this one already has all the references in place to your services project, your controllers and your models. It also has all of the NuGet references that are in play, that are required to do unit testing and Harmony Core. And it has some predefined folders to help organize things. It should build out of the box, so let's just make sure it does. Where are we? Output window, services test. Yep, so it built successfully, so we're good to go. Okay. What are we going to do now? Let's do that to make sure everything's saved. Now what I'm going to do is, just in case, now I don't actually need to do this right now for my particular project, because I know that I've already updated everything to the latest versions and my project templates were in line with my existing solution, but that might not always be the case for you. So whenever we grab the latest project templates, which will be expecting the latest version of Harmony Core. And if your solution is not on the latest version of Harmony Core, we've now got a mismatch between those NuGet package references and versions and so on. We're going to use the Harmony Core upgrade tool to make sure that our project is on the correct version of Harmony Core. So first of all, I'm going to make sure I've got the correct version of the upgrade tool. So this command .NET tool update -g harmony.core.cli tool will go and make sure I've got the latest version of the project upgrade tool, which I already had in my case. And then I'm going to use the project upgrade tool. I'm going to say Harmony Core upgrade -latest. And that will just make sure that my project and my templates and my Harmony Core version and everything are up to date, and I've got the right templates and everything. So that's what we've just done there. We've updated. Now, nothing actually changed in my case, but that would just make sure you're on the latest version of Harmony Core. Okay, so we're ready to go create our unit test. Now, when I click back to Visual Studio, it's updated some of the stuff in the project. It's rewritten them. It hasn't actually changed anything in my case, but it's rewritten the project files. So I'm just going to tell Visual Studio to reload all the project files, and we should be good to go. And now everything's the latest version. Right, we're going to enable our unit testing now. So we're going to go to our regen.bat. And we're going to, here's where it knows about the locations already. Look, test project is services.test. So if you really want to call it something else, then this is used as both the name of the project, the directory for the project, and the namespace for the project. So you would have to make sure all three match and rename it to something else if you really want to. If you remember, our project is configured to use our sample data. So here's our repository structures. And all we're going to do in this case is we're going to enable one more code generation option, which is enable unit test generation. Now, what that does is it actually enables quite a few more code gen commands. So we're going to generate client models, test data loaders, unit test classes, environments, and a hosting program. So we're going to generate quite a lot of additional source files to support the whole unit testing operation. It's this whole block of code gen commands down here that you can see. So let's make sure we've saved that. Let's go back to our command prompt window and let's regenerate our code. We're in the solution directory. So if we regenerate our code, here's all the usual OData stuff. And right at the bottom, now all of this stuff that it's doing now is all of our unit testing stuff. And I'll explain what all of these files are briefly. So we've generated a bunch of code. What we're going to do is, let's think about this. Let's add the code into the project, first of all. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our services test project, and I'm going to add existing item. I'm just going to add all the code in, and then I'll explain what the code does. So data generators, add existing item, and we'll add those files. Models, add existing item, and we'll add our new models. And unit tests, add existing item. And here's our unit tests. Okay, so this is, oh, what was that? That's okay. This is our whole environment. What we've got in here is basically a program called self-host. Okay, this is very similar to the self-hosting program that's present in the services host that you use to start the service. So it basically starts up an environment and runs it. Okay, what it's running is based on the configuration that is defined in unit test environment. And if you've ever done any unit tests, you'll be familiar with the fact that you can have a class with a method that's the test classes that contain unit tests are attributed with a test class. And then one of the things we can do is have an assembly initialize. So this code basically is going to be run whenever we run the unit tests, it's going to run this code. And what this code is doing essentially is setting up and running an instance of the service. A new test server creates an instance of the service, and then it interacts with that service and makes a post request to the authentication get token. So it obtains, using a username and a password, it obtains a token, and it saves that token as something called access token. So we will have an access token available all the time for us to use in our tests. And assembly cleanup simply stops the server. So assembly cleanup runs at the end of all the tests. So it actually spins up its own instance of the server whenever we run the unit tests. Okay, so that's what the environment does. The test constants properties and test constants values are used to determine values for customers and orders and things that we're going to retrieve. So each of the unit tests uses one of these things as its primary key for what it's going to retrieve. And just like we do in Harmony Core, we split it into two halves. And this is where we define our properties. And then in test constants values, we can set the actual values. Now, this source file is a little bit special because the code generation environment is set, as it's described here, it's set up so that this file has been created but will never be overwritten. So what we do have to do is come in here and provide actual values for which customer do I want to read when I test my get customer endpoints and so on. Now, the tutorial has provided sample values for you. So you will find that in the tutorial, you can copy and you can simply replace this section of code. Rather than, for your own stuff, you'd have to go and come up with your own key values. But essentially, I'm saying when I test get customer, I'm going to retrieve customer number. When I test customers count, there should be 38 customers. When I test get customer, I'm going to go for customer number 1. When I look for a customer order, I'm going to go for customer number 1, and so on. These are for testing by alternate keys, by state, by zip code, and by payment terms. So these are the values that the unit tests are going to use. In the 3 folders, the data generators basically load up data. Just like Harmony Core does when you run a sample service, it creates new ISAM files every time and then deletes them at the end so that you've got consistent test data. That can be disabled through an option in regen.bat, which you normally do for a production service. The unit tests do the same thing. They're going to create their own ISAM files and delete them when we're done. And the point is that you've then got a consistent set of data to run your unit tests against. So that's what the data generators do, and they're called from within the unit test environment during startup. Models are simply classes that represent the records that have properties for the fields, just like in Harmony Core data models. And unit tests are the actual tests themselves. So if you've ever done any unit testing framework, testing with the MS Test framework, this is exactly the same. We have classes that are attributed as test class. We have methods that are attributed as test method. They have categories assigned, so you can group them together and so on. And then all of these unit tests simply, here's where it retrieves an instance of it's creating an HTTP client, setting the header for the authorization, determining which URL we're going to talk to, and then basically making the HTTP request, looking at the status code, and essentially doing an assert to say, did we get back? We were looking for customers' value. We're looking for the count of customers, and this is the result. This is how many the count came back as, and this is our test constant that says how many were we expecting. So each of these unit tests calls one of the endpoints for the service to retrieve a customer and make sure you get the customer back. Retrieve customers by state and make sure you get the right results back, and so on. Now, some of these tests are very, very basic. Some of them really could do with a little bit more work, but bear in mind they are code generated. The idea is that these are just a basic set of tests to give you confidence that the basic operations of your service are working. Okay. The intention is, notice each of these is a public partial class. So just like you do with extending controllers and things like that in Harmony Core, you can provide a second half of the partial class and add your own test methods that test all manner of things. And that's the intention. These are just intended to be a simple example, and you go off and generate some more complex tests. Okay, so that's the unit test environment. Like I say, this whole thing is a console app. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything in the instructions. I don't believe I am. The next instruction is build everything. So let's do a rebuild. Make sure everything builds okay. Now, unfortunately, .NET Core unit tests don't work great in the Test Explorer yet. So these things are going to be executed from the command prompts, and you'll see that in a moment. So everything's built, including our services.test program. So we now have that environment. Let's show you how we're going to run these tests. Typically, we're going to run them from the console app. And that's great because that means you can automate this from build scripts and things like that as well, just like you can with full-blown .NET ones. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into the services.test project. And I'm going to use a command. Now, if this was our self-hosting project, we'd use the keyword .NET run to run the program. But with testing, we're going to use .NET test. So it's the test framework. I'm going to give it a couple of extra parameters. I'm going to tell it -- no build, simply because I know I've just built the thing. I don't want to wait for it to get built again. And I'm going to tell it -- verbosity space detailed. So it'll give me detailed results of the output of the tests. We'll do that. So it's going to spin up the test container, and that's what you've seen so far. Now it's delving into our stuff and saying it found test classes, or at least one. And you can see now it's basically running through. So it's just looking for anything that's attributed as test method, and it's running those tests and reporting. The green check mark says that the test asserted that the test code asserted that it was successful. And you can see how long each one takes. Some of them are very quick. This one took 4 milliseconds, 6 milliseconds. Obviously, some of them take considerably longer, but depending on what it's doing. Some of these are retrieving 20, 30,000 items. So this one took 3.1 seconds to retrieve all the orders. Not sure what it's doing right now. Oh, I guess I'd hit pause. So some of them take longer, some of them don't. This one took... where are we? There's one up here somewhere. I can't find it. See, that one took almost 6 seconds to expand all orders and all items on the orders. So that's obviously why that's a very large query. And then we get a summary of the results. 59 tests were found, 59 passed. It took 37 seconds in total, and so on. So there's how you run the unit tests. Okay, that is pretty much it. Like I say, the tutorial will walk you through that in detail, and we have 1 minute for questions. Who has a question?
So at this point, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask a question out loud if you'd like. I don't see anything in the question panel.
Right. Dan has a question.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Dan Dash.
Hey.
Wondering, is there a way when you run the tests, if you can batch up, bunches of groups of tests into, sort of like run them like something you might run overnight and then get the, summary results at the end?
Yes. I mean, you can add as many tests. Typically, I think I would always just have one. I mean, you have the option of adding multiple test projects if you really want to batch things up into different types of things. But these tests are categorized. I might have, I think in our CodeGen environment, for example, we have like 800 unit tests. And you can go in there and run them by, now that uses the Test Explorer. So are you saying, can I run a named subset of them, or?
Well, both. I'm saying, like, can you, I don't know how you said categories of tests, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Is there a way to identify that certain tests belong to certain categories to say, okay, well, I've just updated this project in my, archive, and so I need to make sure that everything's good and
right. And that's what this attribute does in the code. It assigns this test to this category.
Okay.
I believe you can have tests that are members of multiple categories if that's appropriate. Mm-hmm. And you can have any number of tests that are in this category. And in Visual Studio, you can group and sort and order and filter by those categories. But in the command line version, I'm honestly not sure. However, let's try something here. I would imagine, wrong window, bear with me a sec. I would imagine .NET test help. No, maybe it's the other way around. Oh, and that's bringing up a browser, which I've managed to place off screen. Okay, so this is the help for the .NET test command. I'm guessing configuration framework filter expression, maybe. Arguments, options. Framework filter. I think it's this filter. So I think you can filter based on those categories to specify which subset of the tests run. Jeff, do you know, or I'm kind of a little bit guessing, but I'm pretty sure that's what that's doing. Settings, verbosity, run settings.
I think you're right.
Yeah, run settings are specified as name equals value. It might have something to do with its run settings as well. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what that filter does, Dan, so that you can have your test categorized and say, I only want to run the tests for customer, or I only want to run the tests for creating things, or whatever that might be.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, has anybody got their hand up in there? Nope. Okay, thank you very much for your time. We don't have another webinar scheduled yet, but we will address that soon. I think what we're probably going to do next is we're probably going to go back to looking at code-centric stuff for a little while. Let me see what the plan was in here. No, not there. In here. Yeah, I think what we'll do next is we'll go back to code-centric stuff and look at custom code. So we've so far we've included code for traditional bridge, which brings in traditional Synergy code, but we haven't really looked at how do you go about providing truly custom code in the actual Harmony Core web service itself. So providing custom code in the .NET environment. So I think that's what we'll do next, and that will lead on to XF Server Plus migration, which is a little bit of both. It's custom code on the .NET side and more traditional bridge code, but this time code generated based on XF Server Plus method catalogs. So I'm not sure yet whether maybe we'll do those both as one tutorial. I'll see how it works out and see how it looks like time-wise. But those will be the next one or two subjects that we attack coming up. Any final questions? I'm not seeing anybody in the list. Nope. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Oh, and as you leave, you'll see a short survey. We would love your feedback on that. And we hope to see you in a future webinar. Have a great day.